Okay, so my name's Grafton. Um, Everybody can call me by my first name. Um, the so this is addictions, and so it's a lot. All of these summer classes, it's a lot to cover in 7 weeks. And when the class starts on a Thursday, and it's face-to-face multimodal, um, we almost lose a whole week because it doesn't start until Thursday, and the last class ends on a Thursday. So it's a lot of information um, to pack into 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Um, but we'll do the best we can. Uh, so what I thought I would start off with tonight is just basic information about what the class is going to be like, what my teaching style is. I'm going to navigate you through D2L and the syllabus, and then we'll see how much time we have left, and then we'll talk a little bit about addictions. So um, let's talk a little bit about my teaching style. If you've had me, I recognize a lot of you already. Um, so even though it has a whole grading rubric in the syllabus, I wish all counseling classes were pass-fail, because to me, you either know the material or you don't. There's a certain amount of material and knowledge that I think every counselor needs in each subject, not only to pass the NCE and the comps, but to have a foundation. If you wanted to work in addictions as your first job, or had a client at an agency that was struggling with an addiction. So I just think it's kind of the minimal amount of knowledge that you need. So with that being said, all of your assignments except the final paper, if I feel it needs more, rather than giving you a B or a lower score on it, I'm just going to have you either add to it or rewrite it, because it's more important for me to know that you understand the material than a grade. I really don't care about the grade. It's called mastery learning. I just want you to know what you need to know as a professional counselor. Um, so hopefully that will help this process. I can't do that with the final paper because the final paper is due on the last class, and they want grades at the end of the weekend. So I can't have you resubmit that. Uh, but by the time we get there, you should be fine with the final paper, and you'll have plenty of time to complete that. So um, just a little bit about myself. You are all going to introduce yourself on D2L. Uh, there's a little section where you can introduce yourselves if you haven't yet. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Um, let's see, I've been in counseling about 30 years now, maybe a little more. I've been here at Cal U. This is my Cal U Penn West. This is my 20th year here as a professor, and before that I taught at Duquesne and the Citadel and Chatham and a few other places. But my very first degree was from Shippensburg University, and that's in central PA. It looks just like California campus. Um, Edinburgh looks a little different, looks kind of like Clarion, but typical Pennsylvania State University campus. They were all built around the same time, because there was kind of like a mandate to build teacher colleges um, in rural areas of Pennsylvania. So most of them started out as preparing teachers, Most of them have what you call an old main with a clock on the top. And that used to be the primary building. So when I went to Shippensburg, I really wasn't into going to any college. But I was living at home. My parents wanted me to go to college, and it was right down the road. So I went. I had hated high school. I had got my parents to sign like kind of a work permit so I could miss half my high school. I was working at North American Moving, and so working in the garage and packing people's houses and driving small trucks, and I loved it. But since I was living with my parents, I went to Shippensburg University, and it was a totally different experience. The teachers really took an interest in their students. They motivated me. They treated me like an adult, which I guess I was, and just a really positive experience. And over those few years, I really loved it. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it be cool to work at a place like this? But I never thought I would. Um, so I started out in English lit and psych, and it was a winding road after that. Ended up going to study religion, and then school counseling, and then getting my doctorate in counselor education and supervision. And as soon as I heard about this position, I applied, and I ended up here, and it is literally my dream job. I love working with students, and I love the atmosphere. I kind of like its down to earth nature. Um, Nobody really has any egos. Everybody treats everybody with respect and equality. And yeah, so just really love it here. Um, let's see what else. I've got 4 kids. Uh, 3 of them are teenagers, and one of them just turned 6. So that little guy pushed back my retirement quite a bit. So I'm not going anywhere for a while. Um, let's see what else. Uh, yeah, so yeah, this is my primary job, but I work part-time in a hospital psychiatric unit. Um, and really love that too. Liked being able to apply my counseling skills. And yeah, so that's about it. You'll find out more about me. I'll probably tell stories. But all right, let's look at D2L. And I just want to walk, in case you're new, I just want to walk you through the process here. All right, so if you're face to face, I know everybody online's got their computer, but I'm glad you all brought something to look at because it's so much easier using this laptop than trying to figure out the OWL system, and it's not working very well. So so if you don't mind, you can follow along on your iPad or laptop or even your phone. Um, but most of the time, you probably won't need it. So you log on to MyPennWest, and you go down to D2L Brightspace. This should be where all your course shells are. So we're going to pick addictions. And the first thing you're going to come up with is announcements. And this tells you, I guess the main thing is a link to the book. But then you can go to content. And the first thing I want to say about this is that I used to teach a course for the addiction certificate on opioid addiction and treatment. And that was when like the opioid epidemic was in full swing. And I know it's still a problem in Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Um, so, but we don't really teach that anymore. So what I thought I would do is I did want to go more in depth about opioid addiction anyway. So I picked the best parts of that class and made that kind of a concentration for the general addictions class. So I think that's a worthwhile thing to share with you. So we're going to talk about general addictions. We're going to go into each category of addiction, whether it's, alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever type of addiction it might be. But each week, you're also going to have kind of a little focus on opioid addiction. And I think if there's anything you're going to go into, probably the two drugs you're going to deal with most are opioids and alcohol, at least in America. So meth is on the rise again, getting a lot of people in the hospital for that. But we haven't been getting people with like overdoses or anything. It's mainly cognitive damage. So, all right. So let's just look a little bit about what you're going to see each week. And let me just view as learner so you can see the same thing I am. All right, so normally I'll open this up, sometime before class every Thursday for the following week. And so like tonight, I'm taping this, recording this. So that'll be the first thing I upload. I'll either do it tonight or early tomorrow morning. So every Friday, you'll get to see the recorded class. Even if you're in it, you might say, what'd Grafton say about something? And you can go back and review it. Or some people are totally online. So anytime Friday, it'll be up by Friday morning, usually Thursday night. So that'll be the first thing. So right now, there's nothing here, but that's because I will add this recording to it. We're going to go over the syllabus after we look at D2L a little bit. Usually in the lecture, that's when I'm going to be talking about general addiction. And each week we'll pick a new type of addiction. We'll talk about treatment modalities, how to make a diagnosis, different types of treatment. So all of that general addiction lecture will be the first thing you see. I will also add some readings, or maybe a film from the library or PBS about whatever addiction we're covering. But then at the bottom, there's a lot of opioid stuff. And, so it's really just a lot of good information on opioid addiction and treatment. And then down here on this page, this is the Dropbox for student introductions. And then this is your discussion board. So you'll have a week to do each discussion board. So we'll talk about it on a Thursday night, and you just have to do the discussion board before the next class. So you'll have a week to do every discussion board. All right. I'd also like you to respond to 2 of your classmates. And we'll go over what's required for discussion boards when we go through the syllabus. So that's pretty much D2L. It's pretty straightforward. So let's look at the syllabus. So normally this class is taught in 15 weeks during either the fall or spring semester. So in some of my videos on opioids, I might say winter semester, 5 weeks. Just ignore it. You know you're in the summer semester for 7 weeks. So with this class, you can come to Duda Hall 313, Thursdays at 5. You can Zoom in, or you can do completely online, which is, watching the recordings, basically. So let's see. Okay, so the books, most of what we're going to cover, I'm going to upload to D2L. So that should save you a lot of money. It's either going to be journal articles, or I'm going to provide like next week when we talk about alcoholism, I'm going to upload a free version or a link to a free version of the big book from Alcoholics Anonymous. So you can look at that for free. So it'll either be like journal articles, films, or some link that I upload. So you should really only have to buy this one book called Dreamland. And it is a book on the opioid epidemic, but it really has to do with kind of how an addiction takes off. And I chose this because I read it, and I hate buying textbooks for class. I ordered a few textbooks for myself. Each one was like $100, and they're not the big hardbound books. They're like little paperbacks. So $100. Anyway, this one's like between 15 and 20 bucks. So it's also like, it reads like a real book, but it's also kind of a investigative reporting. So this guy was the person who uncovered most of the stuff with Pfizer and everything else. And it really gives you a good read. It also gives you a lot of stories about people who experienced addiction from all walks of life. And so I just think it's a really good read, and I think you'll enjoy it. And if I just gave you a textbook, the discussion boards would be really boring. So I thought this would give you something to discuss in the discussion boards as well. Okay. The other books here are just books that have been used in the class before. I looked at 3 or 4 other syllabi, and this Alcoholics Anonymous one, that's free. I'll post it. The other 2 are you don't have to buy, but they're just general addiction textbooks that have been used before. Let's see. That's all K-CREP stuff. Okay, so this is like the grading scale we're required to put in a syllabus. But the only way you could possibly fail this class or get what might be considered a poor grade would be not doing the work. That's like the only way. So they do really want us to stress using APA style. Here's some links on like free APA guidelines that you could use. So when we look at assignments, during a 15-week course, they would have discussion boards. And I thought the abstinence-based assignment is kind of the classic assignment. You have to pick something you're going to give up, and hopefully it's something you really like. So you keep a journal and we'll go over it. But and then a final paper. I thought these were the main assignments. There were other assignments as well. There was like going to an AA meeting or an NA meeting and then writing about it. But I don't know if you'd have enough time to do that, to line it up, to contact them, to make it, to write about it. And I also think that's something you can do anytime you wanted. The other thing, they had like 4 or 5 quizzes. So I don't think anybody will be heartbroken that I deleted those. I'd rather longer, more detailed discussion boards than just memorizing things, taking a quiz, and then maybe forgetting it. So I like applying knowledge rather than just memorizing things. So that's the Title IX reporting requirements. And these are all, if you experience any problems, these are people to contact at different campuses. Got Office for Students with Disabilities. But I think the main one is at the Cal U campus now. So yeah, I'll accommodate you any way I can. If you have a disability, but just contact OSD. Academic integrity. Yeah, I don't think we'll really have a problem with academic integrity. It's mainly about being respectful to one another, maintaining confidentiality. If somebody tells you that they've experienced some kind of addiction, don't go and tell people outside this class, Be respectful, maintain confidentiality as any counselor would. People are brave enough to share something, then, don't share it. With that being said, this is not therapy either. So you can use your own experience as an example, but this is not therapy. So it may bring about issues if you had loved ones experience an addiction, if you've experienced an addiction, yeah, it may bring up some strong emotions. So, you may want to see a therapist if that happens, if you have some unfinished business with that. But we're not going to get into sharing trauma in our discussion boards or anything like that. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the discussion boards first, because discussion boards, out of like 150 points for the class, it's 1/3 of your grade. So discussion boards are worth a lot now because I took away the quizzes. So please don't just write a short paragraph for the discussion board, and don't just summarize the material that you watched or read. So we want at least 1 page, and that's like a Word document page, and you cut and paste it right in. Don't upload a Word document, just cut and paste it right into the discussion board. 1 page single spaced or 2 pages double spaced. Don't use a huge font, not undergrad. So, yeah, so we should be reading and discussing not only the material, but I want to hear your personal reaction to the material. I mean, you've obviously going to have a reaction and some thoughts about what we're discussing. You may disagree with me. That's great. Nobody's going to offend me or anything if you disagree with me. Maybe you have more experience with a certain kind of addiction than I do. That's okay. Hey, I'm open to learning and sharing as well. So it's all good. Try to add a little bit from each piece of material that you read or watch, or the lectures. You know, a good way to write about a lecture is like, maybe I'll tell a story in the lecture, or maybe I'll say something that's, you know, not in the book. So respond to it. I'm assuming everybody will get full credit for the discussion boards. And if not, you just get to redo them. But who wants to do that? And I really don't want to be that guy. So, you know, don't make me that guy. Just tell you to redo them. So I think that it shouldn't be a problem. It will take a lot of time to go over all the material I put on D2L. So yeah, we're going to have this class, be an hour, hour and a half, but there's many hours of work on D2L. Like just the reading takes time. So, you know, give yourself enough time and give yourself enough time to write it. Don't write it at the last minute. All right, so that's the discussion board. The abstinence-based assignment, we're going to go into this in more detail next week. But I also, because it's summer, I shorten the number of pages. And you're going to have to keep a little daily journal, and you're going to have to give up something, like hopefully something that's a little addictive, like YouTube or smoking or drinking or coffee, something interesting to give up. Social media, that'd be great for 14 days. All right, so we'll talk about that more. There's a little rubric here for grading, but same thing. If you don't do it, if you miss something or it's not long enough, I'll just have you redo that. We have plenty of time. And okay, so, and then the last thing is the addictions paper. We'll talk about that in week 5. So you'll have 2 weeks to write that. And it's basically, you know, just kind of follow the dots, include that stuff, and you'll be good. Okay, so let's look at the assignments. So already, you know, it's a little problematic because next Thursday is the 4th of July and everything's closed. So so what I'm going to do is, we can't miss a week when we have so few classes. So I'm just going to record the lecture and post it with all the readings, and I'll post it next Thursday, and you'll have a week to do it. So you don't have to access it next Thursday. There's no class next Thursday, no Zoom, no nothing. But I'll post everything next Thursday. And then you'll have a week to watch the lecture and do it like normal. So we won't miss a week. I don't think we can afford to. So that's next week. Week 3, we're going to begin the abstinence-based assignment and journaling, but I'll have a whole video just on the abstinence project. And you could also ask me in class 3, that'll be live. You can see that The beginning of each class has some topics like tobacco, nicotine, alcohol, 12-step programs. Then the second part is, watching videos and reading articles on D2L. Then there's a reading in Dreamland, and that's the book on the opioid epidemic. We do get into some interesting things. I think codependency is kind of interesting. Let's see. Class 5. I'll be in Prague presenting at a conference. So that's also going to be recorded. But other than that, it should all be pretty normal. Class 7. So there's not going to be a discussion board for week 6 because you're all going to be working on that final paper. So you're going to turn in the final paper, the last class, and it says presentations, but that's just informally sharing what you'd like to share with the class about what you wrote, what you found out. So that's pretty much the syllabus. And I just want to show you the discussion board. So this one is student introductions. This one's the discussion board. And so in every discussion board or student introductions, post something for yourself, but then read what everybody else writes and respond to 2 of them as well. That's the only way in a class like this that we're going to have some kind of dialogue between the students, because we're not going to have partners for any project. And we're in like 3 different places. We're face-to-face, Zoom, totally online. So, I'd like you to at least know what each other's thinking and give them some response. So whenever you post your discussion board post, read some other people's and post some kind of response to them as well. So this is a pretty typical one. So this is discussion board for week 1. So I posted it today before class, and it's due next week. You'll have a week to do it. And then I'll usually grade them over the weekend. So 3 or 4 days later, you'll have my response. So each one is going to say, respond to Dreamland, respond to the articles posted, respond to the films I posted from the library or PBS or whatever. Tells you it needs to be a minimum of 1 page single spaced or 2 pages double spaced. Just basic things. They're all due before the next class, so you'll have a week to do them. And post the responses to other students anytime you want during that week as they upload their own discussion boards. All right, so questions about anything we went over? No, I don't want to do it the same time. It's hard to do 2 assignments at the same time. So I think we only want you to do the abstinence assignment for 2 weeks. So I'm guessing it'll be due in 3 weeks, but let's make sure. Yeah, so you only have to abstain for 2 weeks, 14 days, and it's going to be due class 6, and the papers due the last class, class 7. Yeah. Yeah. So for a journal for that assignment, people like writing in a journal, but it's hard to turn in. So I would just make a Word journal, It's just easier to turn in. So there's a little paper about your experience of abstaining and, and then the journals, the daily journal. That's it. So I tried to make this manageable for such a short course. I think it is manageable, but I also think that each week is like 2 weeks of class exactly. So it is a lot more reading. It is, I don't think it's a lot more writing, but I think it's a lot more reading and watching lectures and watching videos from the library and things like that. What other questions? How about online? Any questions? All right. Well, I just want to talk generally about addiction, because even when there's a video in there, an introduction to opioids, opioid addiction, but it also talks about general addiction and the cycle of addiction. But next week, we'll also go over what that might look like for cigarettes, alcohol, whatever it might be, and why there is, a cycle of addiction. So we're really going to start the content next class, but tonight I wanted to see, first of all, just and you can just chime in whenever you want. Does anybody have any, like, have you worked in a site that treats addiction? Have you worked with, do you have any experience working with addictions? Anybody online? All right, well, that's okay. That's no problem.
I
I'll
do.
always sound right. Michael, what were you gonna say?
I said I do have some experience working with addiction. I worked at a drug and alcohol treatment center in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania called Roxbury Treatment Center.
See, Shippensburg, there you go. So, yeah, you got some good experience there. Excellent. All right. Did they treat all addictions or were they focused on a specific few?
No, they focused on all addictions. It was mainly a just drug and alcohol treatment facility.
Okay, that's good. Well, you can chime in if I miss some. All right. See, Jessica currently works inpatient psych hospital and addiction. Schizoactive is a big part of your population. All right, that sounds good. So you do have some experience. All right. So that's experience. So just in general, when somebody says the word addict, what first comes to mind without thinking about it too much? Yeah. What's that? A struggle with something. Yeah, so that's kind of like a definition. But do you get a picture? Yeah. 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 So Isabel said she sees people she knows. What else?
Stereotypes.
Yeah, knee-jerk stereotypes.
Learn down. I mean, the first thing I go to is either meth or heroin right away. That's immediately what I think of, just because it's the thing in the community that we see the most.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that there's, and don't get, whenever I say things like this, I'm not negating, uh, you know, people who suffer from heroin addiction or meth addiction. So I just want to qualify statements like this. the media has talked so much about like heroin overdoses and it is horrible. My childhood friend died of a heroin overdose. But the when we really think about it, most addictions are legal. By far the most addictions. And the most dangerous addictions are legal. So if we look at like the numbers of people who die every year from addiction, what do you think the largest number by far is, even today? What's drug? That's number two. So alcohol's number two. What's that, Lucian?
Nicotine, smoking.
Smoking, number one. Absolutely. By far, even though far less people smoke today, a lot of people who smoked 20 years ago, it's caught up with them today. So the numbers are still really high, even though we have far less smokers. Vaping is just as bad as smoking, in a different way. So if you add it up, every illegal substance, add them all up, it doesn't come close to the amount of people who die from tobacco or nicotine. And if you add them all up, it doesn't come close to the amount of people who die from alcohol. So both of those are by far, the worst. As far as fatalities, they're also two of the most difficult addictions to quit. I mean, obviously, opioids are extremely difficult to quit, but alcohol and tobacco are right up there. And they are legal. So most people, like you'll hear in the news, you'll hear commercials, oh, marijuana is the gateway drug. I know a lot of people suffering from alcoholism or heroin or opioids or meth. What do you think their first access to something addicting was? It's always smoking or alcohol, always. So, there's a lot of reasons why people call illegal drugs gateway drugs, but the two biggest gateway drugs are tobacco and alcohol by far. And that's because you can just go into your parents' liquor cabinet or grab their cigarettes. It's the easiest to access for every child. And when you look at the age people access those two, tobacco and alcohol, it's really young, really young. So we're talking like sometimes below 10 years old. So most of the studies show that the earlier somebody accesses anything that can be addictive, the higher the chance that they will become addicted. It has a lot to do with not only how long they will try it, but more importantly, their brain is in the formation process still. So they're creating cognitive pathways, cognitive pleasure zones, all kinds of stuff. And if that's created at a very early age, it's really difficult, after a while to give up. So when we're talking about like neural pathways, the earlier they're formed, the more dendrites are created. They're a little more significant in our brain pathways. So that cognitive mapping really takes hold. So you know, what do you think? What do you think the difference between drug abuse and drug addiction is? You probably heard both the terms. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it creates that physical addiction and it also it's more of it's both emotional and physical dependency. Whereas abuse, you could be functional, you might binge, you know. So yeah, that's the main thing. So one of the things about this class is that I don't know anybody who's never had, a family member or a friend or a peer group or a relative. Everybody's known somebody who has some kind of addiction. And that's why, sometimes this class hits a little closer to home than other classes. I mean, yeah, like in DSM, usually somebody would say, oh, I knew somebody with this diagnosis. But addiction, it's like everybody knows somebody with an addiction. So many people have lost somebody with an addiction. So, it adds a different kind of reaction to this class. It, brings about more emotions to this class. So, I think that be aware of like unfinished business, be aware if you're reading something in Dreamland or we're talking about a certain type of addiction, be aware of your emotional reaction and take care of yourselves, basically, and of course, chances are pretty high that a lot of people in this class have experienced it as well. So that even hits a little closer to home than knowing somebody. Let's see what else. Any questions so far? All right. So usually this class will last between an hour and a half, like live. And then I'll post the recording tonight or early Friday morning, depending on what I'm doing. But it'll always be up before noon on Friday. So you'll have access to the live class if you have to miss it for some reason. But yeah, it's only between an hour and a half. We've been here about an hour. It's only an hour to an hour and a half live because like I have 2 other lectures just for this week recorded. I have a film from, a PBS station. I have like 4 journal articles and like 50, 60 pages to read in Dreamland. So you've got a lot of time to put in just this week on things on D2L. So figure an hour and a half for this. We'll talk about addiction, and every week we'll cover a different type of addiction. And then, I'll let you go and you can go online and watch the other lectures and watch the other films and do all the readings. And all you have to do is a discussion post. We only have those 2 projects. We got the abstinence project and we have the final paper, but all the rest is pretty lengthy, in-depth discussion boards. First discussion board due next week before class. Try not to be late with the discussion boards. If you're late with the discussion board, I'll still give you the points when you get it in, but I won't have time to give you my feedback. So the way I grade discussion boards is the first paragraph is about what you write personally. And the rest of it is kind of my general comments on the subject. So my thoughts for the week, and everybody gets the same thing for those. But the first paragraph is just for you, just for what you wrote. If you include a question in the discussion board, I'll try to answer it. Or I'll just make comments on what you wrote. That's also why I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your reactions, because there's not a lot I can say if you just kind of review the material you read. Because I read it too. So, I'd rather, you can review it, but then I'd like you to kind of give your own commentary on it. What's your reaction to it? It's okay to disagree, like I said. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. All right, any questions with the class? We're at about an hour, and we got some kind of debate tonight on TV. Yeah, Fritz. What's that? No. So remember, 4th of July, campus is closed. So I'm not even allowed holding class, so I'm going to videotape the lecture. It'll be posted Thursday for class if you have this time set aside. But yeah, I'll just record it instead of having it live next week. Anything else? All right. Have a good one. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
Night.